morning, everyone. I wish we were at a point of doing this in person, but it's still really good to see your faces. Melanie, hi. Thank you for being with us this morning. I don't know about where you are, but it is lovely sunshine, and I think we're just gonna celebrate the spring-like feelings. So again, thank you for being here. And before I turn it over to Sean, I just want to give a shout out to Chemung Canal Trust Company, since they are our sponsor for the educational programs, and they make these programs possible for our businesses and our members. So without further ado, the extraordinaire, the infamous, a high-level schlep, Sean Lucchese.
I just noticed I have muting capabilities too, so.
Oh, I'll mute myself then. Okay.
I'm just kidding. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Denise. And thanks everyone for joining us this morning. This is a presentation I look forward to doing every year. It helps me to look back through all of this information and kind of get an understanding typically of what some of the bigger brands are doing and what's trending on social media. But a lot of these lessons filter down to smaller companies, nonprofit organizations, agencies, and the types of clients that we work with, and the types of things that I think we're all trying to do every day in the community. So kind of take those lessons and distill them down a little bit into some primary conversation topics. And as you can imagine, there's been a lot that has changed in the past year, and a lot that is projected to emerge in the coming year or two. And one of the things that I think you'll see is kind of a through line is that we've all become a little bit more savvy on social media. One of the things that I read is that even older demographics now really have a strong handle on using social media, making purchases on social media, kind of understanding how to filter out what is garbage and what's useful. Some of the things that weren't as intuitive for older generations are now pretty common. So the through line that I think you'll hear today is that the users are a lot more savvy, and therefore we as marketers and we as organizations have to make sure that we're representing ourselves appropriately and in a way that makes us appear savvy as well while we're having these conversations. So I'm going to share my screen real quick and hope that this works okay. Everybody see that all right? Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to just share is that there is a little bit of a discrepancy sometimes between what marketers think are important and what consumers think are important, or what they're looking for when they are using social media. And this is a helpful little chart here to show that the three things that marketers don't think are as important as consumers do are engagement with the audience, strong customer service, and transparency. So going right back to what I just mentioned about making sure that we as marketers are just as savvy as the people who are using and following us on social media. We want to make sure that we're delivering the strong customer service that people expect, that we're being transparent and that we're engaging. And also that engagement piece is, you'll see the highest percentage for both marketers and consumers. So it's not that we as marketers are completely offline in thinking that engagement isn't important at all, but we think it's very important and consumers think it's even more important. And some of the things that we really put a lot of time and effort into, whether it's that compelling storytelling piece, the pop culture references, are actually pretty far off from what consumers are looking for and what they think is important when they're out there using social media. So I thought this was a helpful chart to just kind of set some balance a little bit as we're talking about these topics. These are the topics that the trends that I want to cover today. Social commerce, TikTok in general, purpose-driven content, podcasts and newsletters, and then focusing on value over production. And I'm going to kind of talk about these one by one, present a few points, and then open it up for a little bit of a conversation. Rather than waiting to the very end and needing to jump back to social commerce or something that I talked about, 20 or 30 minutes prior, I want to make sure that we have a chance to have some conversation on each of these topics. So if there's something pressing that you want to talk about, here are the trends that I plan to address, and let's take a chance to kind of write down where you think that conversation might fit in, and of course we'll leave some time at the end for that conversation as well. Any questions before we just kind of dive right in? You should be able to raise your hand also, and so if I'm in the middle of a point, then we'll at least see that you'd like to ask a question and can get to that as well. So let's start with social commerce. A lot of major brands are saying that customer acquisition on social media is their top priority now, meaning that they're no longer just trying to use social media as brand building or storytelling or some of the softer deliverables or the fluffier things that we think about as marketers. Most top brands are saying that social media is a priority for customer acquisition now. And taking it a step further, one of the pieces of development that has really taken leaps and bounds in the past year is that shoppers don't have to leave Instagram or Facebook to make purchases anymore. That was available before last year, but it's starting to become extremely popular, and a lot of users are saying that they are purchasing things on social media directly without leaving the app or without leaving that platform. So you may see some larger brands and some businesses that are around Corning and Elmira that I know are using Instagram, for example, as an e-commerce platform. So it is a great opportunity, and it's cheaper and easier than building your own solution. So rather than spending all the time and money to set up a brand new website, making sure that you put all your products on there and that you've got the right development and that it's secure, you can rely on Instagram or Facebook to kind of build that infrastructure for you. And then you're still just putting posts out there and tagging them with the prices of whatever appears in those posts. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty cool on Instagram. You just tap on the photo and the prices of the things in the photo pop up over whatever it is that's priced out. So if I wanted to sell this shirt and I shared a picture of myself on Instagram, you could tap and see a little bubble come up with the price of the shirt. And when you tap on that bubble, it'll take you right to the checkout option. A lot of people, of course, are advertising on these platforms and many others. But this is the first time that we're really seeing a mass appeal of both consumers and marketers using Instagram and Facebook for social commerce specifically. Any questions on that, or how you're using that, or have you seen it? Have you used it as a marketer or as a consumer, and do you feel comfortable with that process? Or what are some of the things that you've seen as it relates to being specifically able to buy things right through these platforms?
I buy so much stuff through Instagram. It's like really bad. I have to get off, but it's great because you can just shop right through there, or it'll take you to the site if they have one, and use PayPal. It's a really good trap for shoppers.
Yeah, and I'll say as a user of the platform, I don't think I've purchased anything right within the platform, but there are a lot of accounts that I follow that promote the things that they've got, whether it's attire or sporting goods or whatever, and then I just go to their link and buy it from their website. But this makes it even easier on their side, and of course for Instagram or Facebook, that keeps me on the platform too. So that's incentive for them. But yeah, I'm just as guilty, Mel. Anyone else? I saw an alert, but I couldn't tell if someone was raising their hand or making a comment.
It was me, Sean. It was just
Oh,
saying
okay.
that I'm also guilty of the shopping from the app.
Yes, we're all victims of this feature. Okay. All right, well, let's jump right over to the next one. And TikTok, I included this on here, not to talk so much about the ins and outs of TikTok, which I'm happy to do. If you're not familiar with the platform, it is a video-based platform. It's not dissimilar from Facebook stories or Instagram story posts or even Snapchat. But the videos can only be a minute long. They're often hyper edited with text on the screen, photos or bubbles that pop up, a lot of editing with old videos or videos that are filmed at multiple locations or at multiple times, and with music, either original music or borrowed music. And it's really pretty addicting platform and pretty interesting once you kind of dive in. But so if you haven't used it, I just wanted to give you a quick overview. And before you assume that it's only young people using TikTok, there are lots of older demographics building their brand, building a business on there. And I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about how they're doing that, because I think some of these lessons apply across social media, no matter where we're trying to build a brand or build a message or sell content or whatever we're doing. And because TikTok trends are in the news all the time, and we see them shared to other platforms, this felt like a good place to kind of talk about why certain things are doing well on TikTok and why certain things don't. So what if you're thinking about getting onto TikTok, and if you're not, you can replace TikTok with Instagram or Twitter or YouTube or your own platform where you're sharing content. You really want to make sure that you're addressing a specific topic, a niche, and that you've got your talking points down. And to make sure that your studio space, if you're doing video, which TikTok is a video platform, is well lit, and that the audio is easy to pick up and that there's not a lot of background noise. Where I'm standing, for example, is right in front of a large window. I'm standing up. I've got my laptop propped up so that it's at eye level. There are other lights on in my office, but not too much light behind me, so that I'm clear, and hopefully you can hear clearly everything that I'm saying. And that's, people have ring lights. Those are great. You want to make sure that things are well lit, and that people can hear you. A lot of mistakes that people make is that they set up all this lighting and it looks good, but the audio isn't there. And even though it's a video platform, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or any others, audio is actually most important, because if people can't hear what you're doing, it could look great, but you're not getting any messages across. If you're creating a new account on TikTok, or if you're trying to gain some new followers on any social media platform, you want to post multiple times in the first couple of days. You want to do like kind of a sprint of posts. This isn't best practice to do all the time. So you don't want to be posting several times a day on Facebook, for example. But when you're establishing a new presence, or you're trying to get a new campaign out there, one of the things that's important is to make sure that if one post gains a lot of traction, that there are others around it that people can see and relate to and connect to. So if they do find that one post of yours on a platform like TikTok, you want to make sure that that's not the only one there, that they can then go into your account and see that you're establishing a topic, you're establishing a niche and some talking points in what it is that you do, and doing those quickly and in quick succession, especially in the first few days of the account, is important, so that people don't just see one bit of content, go to your account, and then realize that that's all that's there. And the last thing I will say is there are lots of little things built into all social media, particularly on TikTok. We find this a lot on Twitter and Instagram, where hashtags, trending sounds, the words that we use, the descriptions of our videos and of our posts, those are all very important. And on Instagram, even though it's a photo platform, it's not enough to just post a photo with one sentence caption if you want to build a following. If you want to build a following, you've got to use hashtags. You've got to tag other accounts. You've got to make sure that what you're writing as a description has enough keywords in it that if people are out there searching, they're going to find you. Because those are the people that don't already know that you exist, and you're only discoverable if you use these hashtags and sounds and the sorts of things that that your users are looking for. So I apologize. I can only see the alert, but I can't see, because I've got this presentation open, what the questions are. So
She wants to know if you have a suggestion for a ring light.
I don't. As far as I know, they're all pretty similar. And I don't use one myself, so I can't say, which one I use. I just try to be, like I said, in kind of a well-lit space.
We all don't look that good, Sean. We need a ring light sometimes.
I have a ring light that is, it's a sunny day out, so. But thank you. So anything else on this? I know, like I said, the topic is TikTok because that's really trending and that's really taking off. And it's a platform that is already profitable, but the users don't get in on the ad sharing like they do on, say, YouTube or something. But it's much like Instagram or Twitter, where the users can profit by either selling something or by becoming viral and by becoming an influencer, and then being able to sell their platform to sponsors who want to work with them. All right, saw another alert.
Just a comment from Julie. She said, I saw at Staples and Vestal the other day an end cap with a display set up for a home video setup with all the equipment.
Yeah, they're not hard to find, and they're online. Obviously, there are lots of reviews there. Yeah. Thanks, Julie.
So TikTok is more for just like influencers and things like that. They build their brand and then they start getting sponsored by things like that. Because I haven't got on it. I see a ton of videos on Instagram, obviously, that have come over. But wouldn't be something really that, a not-for-profit would use on TikTok. I guess unless they want to engage for other reasons, but not to sell services usually, right?
I think there's a big opportunity to get your services out in front of a much larger audience on TikTok. But I would recommend, as a nonprofit, using the platform initially to just get your messaging points out there and make sure that you're getting in front of that new audience. Now, if some of you are hyper local in the services that you provide, that might not be valuable. And you might want to spend more time where more of your users are right now, and that might not be it. But I would say right away, it's not a place where people are able to go in and shop, like I talked about in the first point. But I've purchased things already based on some of the people that I follow on TikTok. For example, there is a golf coach in Los Angeles whose approach to coaching and teaching is just something that really connected with me. And so I signed up for just a little series of videos that he did off of TikTok, where he was able to go into some more depth and detail. So he has a link for that in his bio there on TikTok. And I was just really fascinated by his content. I loved the way he talked and taught. And because that connected with me, and because it was something that I was interested in learning more about, I clicked over to his website and actually made a purchase there.
I don't know if you can, Sean, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Okay. My daughters use TikTok a lot. They're 9 and 10. So we have a lot of bad videos that come out of our house. But what, in terms of the Gaffer district, we don't use anything in that. We don't use TikTok right now, but I'm curious, like, is that something for a downtown district to be able to do in a classy way? Because I see a lot of bad TikTok in my life.
Yeah.
But
Well,
where do you
yes.
find, where do you start?
So the content that you put out there, and the reason why the slide is up here the way that it is to connect with the sort of people that would be interested in your content. So if you use hashtags like travel, hashtag upstate New York, hashtag, small town, or best Centerway Square or something like that, you're going to attract people who are interested in those particular topics. The algorithms on TikTok work pretty similar. I mean, they've got their own setup, but they work similarly to some other social media sites where, if I'm looking like on YouTube, if I watch certain videos on YouTube, then my welcome page and the suggestions that I get from YouTube are going to be in line with the things that I've watched in the past. TikTok works exactly the same way. So if I click on and engage with videos about travel, videos that show small towns, small businesses, and those types of stories, they're going to show me more of that. So that's the audience that, as the Gaffer District, you would get in front of. And then once you realize that that's the topic or the niche that you want to talk to, then you can have some fun just creating edited 1 minute videos.
And is it better to have like a specific person as a personality for a platform like that? Or is this just like wide open? This could get really creative in terms of showing architecture or, I like I said, I just see a lot of bad at this point in my life. Maybe I need to look into what some good TikTok looks like.
For sure. Yeah. And again, like, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here, but the videos that get recommended are based on the videos that you've watched and liked and interacted with in the past. So I'll leave that as it is. But I mean, I don't think it's necessary to have the same person all the time or the same, to only talk about architecture. But if you decide that your niche is small towns in upstate New York, because that's what people on certain audience on TikTok is looking to engage with, then you could talk about a variety of things around that specific topic. And I would just say then to keep it on brand. So don't make one video that is really professional and talks about architecture and talks about the history of the town and specific buildings, and then another video that shows something wild and goofy and has a trending dance in the background or something like that, because that then your audience, just like any platform, is going to be kind of confused about what type of town you are,
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Any other questions on that or anything else? Okay, let's jump over to the next topic, which is blocked by the chat box that just came up. So I know it's purpose-driven campaigns that I want to talk about next. And this is something that was trending, and I think we talked about it last year. And if you just give me a second, here we go. Now I can actually see the slide. We did talk about it last year and making sure that your voice is authentic, because as people get more savvy, they can kind of see through the garbage, like I talked about earlier. But if you can remember back to 25 years ago, which was last summer, or what feels like 25 years ago, there was a lot happening in terms of social justice in this country and around the world. And it forced so many brands and companies, really everyone, to come clean about who they are as a business, who they are as a company, and who they want to represent. It wasn't good enough just to be somewhere in the middle. It was really important for users to see that the people that they followed, the brands that they followed, had a stance and were consistent with that. And what I want to talk about here are some of the ways to make sure that you have a stance, and that you're not just like sort of BSing people, that what you do behind the scenes is just as important as what you're showing on social media. So some of the topics that we saw in the past year have become particularly important for users, and users have said that they're 15 to 20% more likely to buy from a company that talks about these topics. So it's not just like, hey, this is what I want to see on my feed. This turns into money spent. But the topics are environmental sustainability, inclusivity, and treatment of employees. Now, when we think about our small businesses here in Corning, we can certainly talk about environmental sustainability, and maybe it's the packaging that we use when we're giving someone to-go containers, or it's the way that we discard or donate products and things. And inclusivity can mean a number of different things, but it's important to remember, again, that this is not just a social media campaign, but that the things that you do related to hiring, related to maybe making donations in the community, related to who you're showing in your content, is inclusive of a variety of different people, and all different colors, all different genders, and that's important to our users. And the treatment of employees, I think, is particularly in a small town, something that we can really highlight and really talk about. So, think about maybe doing a campaign where you're highlighting the people that work with you, and then also talking about what you're doing during a pandemic to make sure that things are okay for those people as well. I can't remember the percentage. Let's see if I wrote it down. There was a specific percentage on users who said they're more likely to make a purchase when the pandemic is over from local businesses that treat employees well. So they're keeping an eye on what we're all doing. And in terms of planning for purchases, they intend to spend money with businesses that are more in line with these topics particularly. The things that happen when we are focusing on these purpose-driven topics is that we establish a long-term relationship then with our audience, which is really what we want to do. And that's the goal with social media. It's different from showing a commercial on television because it's a relationship that is constantly developing. It's an opportunity for the audience to have conversations with us. And if we can do it well, then that long-term relationship is sustainable. And kind of what I said right at the top, social media doesn't exist in a vacuum. So if you're doing something behind the scenes, or if your board members are in the news for something terrible that they said or did in their own business, then your own social media posts about inclusivity and sustainability are not going to mask that. The things that you do as a business and being consistent in those things are really important. One of the things that we saw a lot of, particularly last year, was during Pride Month, which was in June. Lots and lots of businesses and social media accounts show the rainbow colors or change their logo to show support for the LGBTQ community. And the second that happens on June 1st, and I'm sure it will happen again this year, you're going to see a lot of savvy users out there calling out particularly larger brands that don't really stay consistent with that message, and maybe are just changing what their logo looks like for a month to try to cash in on a different audience. So if that's not something that your business is going to do consistently, or your board members are going to do, or your staff is going to do consistently, then it's better not to try to jump on a trend like that, because it's going to get called out if it hadn't been already. Oh, here's the number. I did write the number down, just not where I expected it. 60% of millennials and Gen Z users plan to spend more money with businesses that take care of their employees during the pandemic. So 60% is not an insignificant number. Any questions on this? I know there is sort of covering a lot of things, the purpose-driven content, the inclusivity, the sustainability, but I kept them all under one point here to just have the conversation about making sure that you are consistent with your messages, and that this is not just on social media, but this is something that reflects all across your business. Okay, let's jump over to the next slide then. I want to talk about podcasts and newsletters, neither of which sound like a brand new hot trend, but both of which are becoming more and more important as we think about how we're communicating with our audience. Convenient content, which is what I'm calling this, is just simply easier to find and consume. So when you put a post out there on social media, you're hoping that your followers will see it. And we all know that only a percentage of people who follow our content are actually going to see the posts. And you can pay to get that in front of more people. But if someone subscribes to a podcast or subscribes to a newsletter, that content ends up right in their inbox, or it ends up right in their earbuds, because it's in their podcasting platform. And 55% of Americans now listen to podcasts, and newsletter consumption is up 14% in the past year. These are things that are easier to consume, and they're easier to get into the hands of your consumers, because we can listen to podcasts while we're driving. We can listen to podcasts while we're out for a run, or out for a walk, or folding the laundry, or making dinner. And newsletters, as I said, they end up in your inbox. And even if I don't open every newsletter that gets sent, I at least see the headlines. I at least see, the subject line about what it is that might be going on with your organization. And it's easy to digest. It's easy to get like a full snapshot of your organization or your business by just scanning your newsletter. So that's something that, if I'm subscribed to it, I'm going to get it in my inbox, which is different from social media. Like I said, we all know, even if I'm subscribed to your channel, I might not see every bit of your content. And one of the things I wanted to talk about with podcasting specifically is, if you're thinking about advertising on a podcast, That is going to become easier in the next year. So Spotify is testing right now some podcast commercials that exist a little bit differently than what we're accustomed to. So if you listen to a podcast now, you know that any ads that you hear are read by the hosts of that podcast or are edited right into the final podcast. So once I download that podcast to my device and start listening, I'm hearing it start to finish. It's not like watching television where I see, maybe 10 minutes of content and then the local station drops in some ads. And even if I'm watching the same thing as a friend of mine in Nashville, for example, they're going to see different commercials in that spot. And then we'll go back to watching the same content, and then we'll all see different commercials. Some are the same, some are different. Podcast advertising is getting to a point where they've got the technology to be able to do that now. So if you create a 15 or a 30-second ad as an advertiser, and you say that I want this ad to get in front of travelers in the Northeast of the United States, they can start to place it that way. And if I live in New York, I might hear different ads, even if I'm listening to the same podcast as a friend that lives on the West Coast. So, the pros and cons of that is that, of course, it's going to be easier for larger businesses now to just make an ad and get it in front of a lot more people. They don't have to establish any rapport with the podcast hosts. But the pros are that we can all then create an ad and decide how much we want to spend on that to get it in front of listeners. And it might become easier to track as well. When we know exactly how many people heard our ad, whether they skipped ahead or whether they took an action by visiting a website or a social media site as a result of that ad, I expect we'll be able to get a lot more measured in podcast advertising within the next year or so. But in the meantime, if you are someone who listens to a lot of podcasts, there's a whole variety of some very popular ones and some very niche ones. And right now, podcast advertising is extremely effective because it's got your attention and you're downloading it as a user because you like that content or you like those hosts. And if they read an ad to you, you're probably pretty likely to take an action based on what they read. So if I were to take a break right now and tell you that this coffee I got from Soulful Cup this morning is really delicious, and I don't always get a large coffee, but I felt like this was going to be a day where I really needed a large coffee. And I said that to the baristas, and they, made sure to say, I hope you have a good day and I hope it goes well. And if you need more coffee, we'll be here for you. That's going to make an impression. If I were to just take a break and your screen went blank and you saw a 30-second ad for a car dealership or something, and then we came back to the presentation, that might not have as much of an effect on you because you came here to see my presentation. And if I'm going to tell you something that's important to me, you're probably more likely to listen to it. So if you have a chance to advertise on podcasts, even when this technology begins to change, I really recommend, doing some research and seeing if you can afford or if you can work with some podcast hosts. And if you can't, try to get on there. Try to get on the show as a guest. There are lots of podcasts locally. We have right in the Gaffer District, Rooted Planning Group, Amy Irvine. They have a great podcast where they talk about, it's called Wine and Dime. So they talk about wine, but they also talk about investing and money tips. And it's a great combination of topics. We have the Community Foundation has their Good Works podcast that goes out every month. So if you want to get on some of those podcasts and get your own content out there, find what's local. You don't always have to find the giant NPR podcasts or whatever's out there that is extremely popular, because those might be cost prohibitive. So any questions on that? Any questions on that convenient content, as we're calling it?
Not so much a question, Sean, Amy here, but we've been experimenting a little bit, and it's similar but different in the sense of like digital radio stuff.
Mhm.
And even too in the sense of making, how you're speaking to it with making it easier. A lot of the channels we've sort of been hitting have been interesting because most times it's that people are subscribed or kind of pay a little something to be able to listen to that. So it's
Mhm.
been interesting to see too that kind of getting to people where they already are and are wanting to hear it in a way, maybe. But
Yeah.
it's just been off.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with that kind of programming, whether it's podcasts or paid digital radio, is that there are so many options. I mean, if you think about the number of channels that are on cable television, that's nothing in comparison to how many podcast shows are out there, or how many digital radio channels are out there. And so if I'm listening to something and really fascinated with it, it probably is very much in line with something that is my niche. It's targeted to someone my age. It's targeted to a variety of different interests working together. So, if you can advertise on that podcast, you may only reach a few hundred or 1,000 people, but those people are going to be your people. If you do your research and you know your demographic really well, you can find your people out there, and you're very likely then to get them to take some action. All right, so let's jump into the final point, which is value over production. And I did start off, or sorry, in the TikTok section, I talked about your home studio and making sure that the audio is good and that you've got the best ring light and all of that. But truthfully, over the past year, production has moved into people's homes and apartments. And even when we're watching uh, shows on television, or watching the morning show, or you're watching the late night shows, they're talking and presenting from their own homes and apartments. When people come on the news and they're an expert in a specific topic, they're not in the studio anymore. They're going live or pre-recorded on a platform like Zoom, and we're seeing their living room or we're seeing their home office. So we're not expecting anymore to see this absolutely perfect production, and that's okay now, because we're all accustomed to that. Even in the most polished news programs or TV shows that we watch, that's moved into sort of the less quality production that normally we wouldn't see, but now we've grown accustomed to. So don't let the fact that you don't have the perfect setup get in the way of creating content and putting it out there. And in the way of creating content, less is more. And I always talk about this. I say this a lot, but it's become even more evident during the pandemic. You want to ask whether your audience really even wants to hear from you right now. We all know what's going on in our own homes, in our own jobs, in our families, in our own communities. And we don't need to be interrupted by a marketing message every 10 seconds. If you have something that is really valuable and you want to share it, put it out there. And if you don't put it out there. You don't have to. So, sites like Facebook and Instagram, really their algorithms are just set up for you to be posting 2 to 3 times a week organically. And then the stories, the Instagram stories or the Facebook stories, those are there so that if you want to post more often, if you want to show like more behind the scenes things, that's the purpose of those. A platform like Twitter, that's set up for people to post maybe once a day and then to spend some time maybe commenting or interacting on other people, with other accounts. And TikTok is set up to be about once a day or maybe 4 or 5 times a week. And so these algorithms are not set up for companies and organizations to be posting multiple times a day. And when we think about whether people really want to hear from us, and you're just trying to pump content out to keep your board happy, that's not doing you any good. It's not doing your business any good, and you're likely to lose an audience that you keep interrupting. They may mute your content and you'll never know it, or they'll unfollow you and you will know it, or you'll see the numbers drop. So keep that in mind, particularly as it relates to this past year. It's become even more important. Post when you've got something interesting to share. So that's all I've got. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen there and just open it up to conversation, questions, observations, things that you've seen that work or don't work in your own social media use, or things that you have questions about, whether you're a user, a marketer, or whatever you're trying to accomplish on social media. Emily asked if I can speak to the QR code comeback. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. QR codes were a nightmare when they first came out, because you needed to download an app, and if you saw something and it was like a spur of the moment, like, oh, that's interesting, you didn't have the app on your phone, there was no way that you were gonna scan that QR code. And so then they kind of went away for a while, but now it's built into our phone cameras that you can just open up your camera and the camera will detect that QR code. And there's a lot of additional interactivity that's been built into those codes. So for example, in the past, you could scan a QR code and it would take you to a website, and that was basically it. It was actually just easier to open up the Safari app on my phone and type in the website. So they would have done themselves a favor if they just said www.mybusiness.com instead of putting a QR code there. But now there are so many different uses. If you've been to, let's use Lake Placid as an example. There are a lot of restaurants in Lake Placid that have QR codes the second you walk in, so that they don't have to hand you a menu. So you scan it with your phone, and now they don't have to worry about wiping off their menus or printing a bunch out that they have to throw away now because of the pandemic. That's one way that you get to interact with their menu. Knowing that we're holding a device in our hand while we're looking at other devices. So if I'm on my laptop, sometimes there are QR codes that show up on a website, which in the past was absolutely ridiculous, because if a QR code is set up to take me only to a web address, why would it be on your website? Well, now that can maybe help me download their app, or it can help me access a video that is easier to view on my phone. So because I'm holding my phone in front of a laptop, I can scan it right there and then see some additional, maybe more interactive content. So I think that's why it's coming back. The technology is interesting, but it was kind of put out there a little too soon in the past. And in my opinion, I think that's why it's coming back.
Sean, it's Maggie Barnes at Arnott.
Hey, Maggie.
Fast question here. Critics and bad reviews and complaints on public-facing pages of your platforms. Do you take that offline? Do you acknowledge it on the public-facing and tell them you'll message them privately? Do you blow it off and not do anything? What's your guidance there?
Treat it like a real concern, especially right out of the gate. If you see a negative comment, don't delete it. Don't ignore it. Respond to it publicly so that anybody else who visits your page can see that you're engaged and that you want to make it better. And if the person doesn't want to actually get their issue fixed and they just want to complain, they will make that evident pretty quickly. And then you don't have to continue to argue or engage with that person. So if it becomes clear that they just want to start an argument, Maybe after your initial response, you can offer again for them to call you or email you or share a specific complaint that is actionable on your end. But that if they don't want to do that, that, you know, you're not there to just engage. But at that point, I still wouldn't delete it. Screenshots exist everywhere. So if you end up deleting it and they share later on, this was the conversation and now it's gone, that just looks shady on your part as a business or as an organization. And I think it's human. I mean, I think we all have bad interactions. And if they're coming to you publicly with a complaint, you have an opportunity to address it there. You don't always have the opportunity to show that you're business with high quality customer service. And that's something that's important to social media users.
Hey, Sean. So on that note, a lifetime ago, I worked at Marriott, and they would always talk about the surveys they did at Disney. And they found that the people that were happiest were actually the ones that had an issue, because once they rectified that, their experience for some reason was better. So when I go to these pages and I see these small businesses deleting these things or ignoring them, it completely turns me off to them. So when they say, we're so sorry about that, we'll private message you or we'll do whatever, I have a better feeling about them than the ones where you saw it, now it's gone, or, you know, no one has ever responded and it was 4 weeks ago. It just looks terrible.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. And there are lots of platforms out there. I'm not a big advocate of things like Yelp or TripAdvisor because I think they, as businesses, hold a lot over the heads of restaurant owners and small businesses. And to me, that sort of like competition is just not, it doesn't sit well with me. However, as a business owner or as an organization, when someone does go onto a platform like that, or they go onto a Google My Business page or somewhere that is not your social media profile, you cannot just go ahead and delete it. So we could talk all day about whether you should delete these comments or not, but the truth is they could just go somewhere else onto a platform that you don't have as much control over and make the same complaint. Now you have a chance again to respond to it as a business, but you're not allowed to delete it. I'll give you a quick story. I work with a few funeral homes in the region here, and someone posted a picture on their Google Business page of an absolutely absurd, like, person in a bathing suit, and had nothing to do with funeral homes in upstate New York. We don't have beaches, and that's definitely not what they're trying to put out there. But it was a photo that someone else shared and said, this is my experience with the funeral home. It took me 2 weeks to get that photo off of their Google Business platform. And you would think that that's just an obvious one, like, hey, we're a funeral home in upstate New York. This clearly has nothing to do with us. But it was a heck of a process to get that off there. So if someone shares a photo of a terrible plate of food at your restaurant, you're never going to get it off there because that's an authentic photo. It's in an authentic review. And if it took me 2 weeks to remove an absolutely absurd photo that has nothing to do with a business, you know, that stuff is there to stay. So you really want a strategy on how you're going to respond to it rather than thinking about whether you want to delete it or not.
John, can you talk a little about how fundraising online with social media has become huge and how to use that properly in your channel?
It has, yeah. People are more comfortable making those donations online. I think if you treat it like a campaign and you can do a blend of real life and digital donations, that's really the best way. So the prime example that thankfully we have in our region now is FLX Gives, now every year in November. And they build an incredible platform. They promote the campaign that this day of giving is going to happen. It's only going to happen online. You can only make your donations online, but you can prepare your members ahead of time. You can prepare your volunteers, your board members ahead of time. And you can even, like what I've done in the past with a nonprofit, I've asked my board to make a donation, but to do so at very specific times. So, you know, it's something that kind of games the system a little bit, but it shows people that there's engagement. And I think, you know, whether you're using a platform like FLX Gives or you're using, what is it, GiveGab, there's lots of different like short-term fundraisers out there, Indiegogo, things like that. If you're running a campaign for digital fundraising, there's a way that you can get people in real life by calling them on the phone or emailing them to make donations at key times and show people that the bar is moving and that we're getting closer to our goal, even if the organic users are not doing that at exactly the times that you would want to see them do that. So I think if you want to run a successful digital fundraising campaign, it has to be a mix of online promotion and offline fundraising.
I have to run. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, we just have a minute or two left. If there are no last minute questions, I'm happy, of course, anytime to talk with anyone offline. I will put my email in the chat here. Feel free to reach out to me. And I know that this was recorded, so I or the chamber will be happy to share that.
Thank you, Sean, very much. As usual,
you.
Sean is an incredible resource, and we are incredibly grateful for the work that he does with the chamber. If you're having any marketing questions and you need help, free agent, please keep them in mind. Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you, everyone, for making time for us today. I hope you took a lot away. I saw some note takings, which is great. And also thank you to Chemung Canal Trust Company as our sponsor for these programs. So without further ado, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day and happy
Thanks very
Friday.
much. Yeah.